Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? Great. Okay, so warm welcome. And before I get started, I'd like you all to think. Have you wondered why some companies take that huge leap and others don't? What are the differentiating factors for such companies? And how to turn a good organization into one that produces sustained results? How is it some companies manage to do and not all companies do? So what is the difference? So they have analyzed all these companies, and as a result, they've come up with some key concepts, which is what the book is about. So the prominent thing of this research is, if you had invested $1 in the year 1965, if it was a good to great company, your $1 had become $470, whereas the normal companies was just around $56. So like you know, it's about 6.9 times more, right? So that is what they have identified as the good to great companies. And since this is like a phenomenal topic that they have researched and come up with some key findings and the concepts of this book, that's what I really liked about it, and that's the reason why I chose this book. So before I get on to the 7 concepts of the book, let me run you through quickly about the criteria that they managed to pick for these companies. Among 1,400, they came up with just 11 companies as good to great. So what was it? So the companies that were identified were those who had sustained results for 15 years. So it's not just good performance 1 or 2 years, it was over 15 years. And they compared it with companies that failed to make the leap, right? So that the 11 companies became the good to great, and the balance companies were the comparison companies. And so the 11 companies, the good to great companies that were identified by Abbott, Circuit City, Fannie Mae, Gillette, Kimberly-Clark, Kroger, Nuka, Philip Morris, Pitney Bowes, Walgreens, and Wells Fargo. So these were the 11 companies. And what did the good to great companies share in common? And what actually distinguished them from the comparison companies? What their research was all about? And what made them different? And they collated all this data and the information, and they came up with these concepts. They studied the patterns, and all this unorganized data, they put it together, stitched together, and came up with some 7 brilliant concepts, which I'll quickly run you through. So the first concept is about the level 5 leadership, which we keep hearing many times. So level 5 leadership is nothing but a blend of personal humility and professional will. So the larger goal of building a great company, the ambition is to put the company first and not the individual. So the 5 levels are, the first level is a highly capable individual. The level 2 leader is a contributing team member. Level 3 is a competent manager. Level 4 is an effective leader. And level 5 is the executive, which is on the topmost, who has excellent personal humility and great professional will. So he gives a beautiful example, of the CEO of Rubbermaid. His name is Stanley. And in an article that he wrote, Stanley talks about himself 44 times. I did this. And whereas the word we was just, I think, 16 times as against it. So he says, although Stanley took Rubbermaid to a very great height and did very well, once he left the company did not grow further. And that's what he says. Stanley is a very good level 4 leader and not a level 5 leader, because level 5 leaders, they don't talk about themselves. They put the company and the team first. What are the contributions of the other executives? So that's the key differentiating factor. The second concept is first who and then what. So this is a slightly controversial topic as far as I'm concerned, because he says get the right people and then figure out what they will do with it. Okay, so first is getting the right people, and then he says take the wrong people off the bus, and it's important to put the right people in the right seat, and that's when the business will keep growing. And he also says with the right people, you don't really have to keep motivating them, and if they even the incentive is not something they look for, because they are so focused in their work and giving their best. So great vision without great people is irrelevant. Then the CEO of Wells Fargo, he says that he's hired people whenever and wherever he thought that they were the right people. He just hired them immediately without even having a specific job in mind for them. Now, I don't know how relevant it is in the current times, but this is one of the good to great companies that has achieved it. And the CEO of Fannie Mae, he says, with the right people, asking them the right questions and engaging with them in a vigorous debate will ensure the company is a great one. And like I said, they don't care about incentive. And then Nucor, they say, with their steel workers, Nucor is a steel company, and with their labor, they say, we hire 5 people, we make them work, give them the work of 10 people, and we pay them a salary of 8 people. So thereby making it a win-win for everybody. So their logic was, by doing that, the good people thrive, the hardworking ones thrive, and the lazy ones then automatically get off the bus. So this was something that they followed. And then the CEO of Circuit City says, there are 5 factors that are involved in the success of the company. And what are all the 5? He says it's people, 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 people. So that is the importance that has been given of people. So he's, normally we say people are the greatest asset, but Jim Collins says the right people are your greatest asset. Now, one thing that I found here is, what is the definition of the right people? I guess it varies organization to organization. This part is not defined, so he just called it as the right and the wrong. The third concept is confronting the brutal facts. He says to make a great company, you need to make great decisions, and for doing that, you need to know what are the brutal facts of your company, basically accepting the hard and the harsh truth. So like he gives the example of Kroger, who confronted the brutal truth that the old model of the grocery store was going to be extinct, and therefore they acted on it. So basically accepting and seeing what needs to be done. And they also decided to eliminate, change, and replace every store in every region, and thereby create new realities. So he also gives an example of Pitney Bowes, and he says there in the company culture, the junior people could stand up and tell their senior people, what you're doing is incorrect, or this is not right, or this is a better way of doing it. So they had that kind of freedom, right? And the leaders also were able to accept whatever were the brutal facts. So he's given some key principles that says like expending energy in trying to motivate people is a large waste of time. He doesn't believe in that. And he says lead with questions, don't give answers. That's what as a coach I do as well. So leading with the questions. Engage in dialogue and debate, not to coerce your people. Do not play the blame game, and build red flag mechanism. So whenever something is not right, the system should automatically be able to pick it up. And a beautiful concept he's explained here is called the Stockdale paradox, where he says every good to great company, they've all had significant challenges, but they accepted the brutal facts, and they had an unwavering commitment and a faith to prevail and get over that. So that is the Stockdale paradox. The fourth is the hedgehog concept. He compares a fox with a hedgehog, and how every time the hedgehog manages to win the fox, despite the fox being cunning. And it's a very simple concept. It reduces all the challenges and the dilemmas to see what is really relevant for the business, and it ignores the rest. So he gives a lot of examples here. One is that of Walgreens, how they really took the hedgehog concept very seriously. Now, Walgreens was a convenience store. So normally, these stores are spread across, right? But if Walgreens found a great location, even if it was just half a block away from a profitable Walgreens store, and then, they found the location to be great, they would close the previous one and, despite costing the lease, whatever, and open another one. They, in fact, had about 9 stores within a 1-mile radius. And, he says that helped them in the economies of scale. But I don't know how practical it is to do it in the current day context, having so many, stores next to each other. But Walgreens, what worked is they linked the concept of the convenience store, and they had a simple economic idea, economic measure of profitability, which is profit per customer visit. So this was their guiding line. So every time they would measure this and then take their business decisions based on this. So the hedgehog concept is simple. It is the intersection of what you can be the best in what you do, what is driving your economic engine, and what is it that you're deeply passionate about. So based on this is the hedgehog concept. The fifth one is a culture of discipline. Even though your business has getting a lot of challenges, having a right culture of discipline, he says, helps solve your business problems. And he gives an example of Abbott, where the CFO came up with something called the responsible accounting, where every item of the cost, revenue, and the investment was clearly identified with an individual. And therefore, they were able to measure the ROI better. And to build the culture of discipline, he talks about build a culture around the idea of freedom and responsibility. Give the people the freedom that they want, at the same time make them responsible. Fill it with self-disciplined people so that they are able to fulfill whatever responsibilities is needed from them. And do not confuse the culture of discipline with a tyrannical disciplinarian. So he gives an example of Lee Iacocca. He was also known as the dictator Lee, because he had a towering personality and the discipline to shape Chrysler. So he did a phenomenal job. Like he overall he shaped the management structure. He instituted strict financial controls. He improved the quality. He rationalized the production and of course did mass layoffs as well. But despite doing all this, after a point in time, you're doing this such a major turnaround, after a point in time, he lost focus and the company began to decline again. So again, he says he was a good level 4 leader and not a level 5 leader. And adhering with consistency to your hedgehog concept. For him, I think the hedgehog concept was like the Bible. Everything was built around it, and create a stop doing list. He also gives another nice thing saying, rinse your cottage cheese. What does that mean? He says, one small step that is added to the other smaller steps, and doing that consistently gets you into a super discipline. And I think this is something a lot of us have to learn and imbibe, because consistency is the key. The other key concept is on technology, how technology can be an accelerator. He says good to great companies, they avoided the tech fads. They didn't really go totally by tech, because they used to ask the right questions to say, like, how can technology actually help my business to grow? How does it enhance my cash flow, my top line, bottom line? They used to ask the right questions, and only then they used to take the right sort of decisions. So the good to great companies, they use technology as an accelerator, and then they would hit the breakthrough using technology, and they used to tie it up with their hedgehog concept. So when you use right, technology becomes an accelerator momentum and not a creator, because he says technology alone cannot build great results. So it doesn't rely totally on technology. The other last concept is the flywheel and the doom loop. What is that? He says good to great companies, they come up with a cumulative process. It's not like one single thing that overnight change them to be successful, but it's step by step, action by action, decision by decision that turns the flywheel, and that is what adds up to the spectacular results that they produce. So it's not like one key event that changed things for them, but little things that was gaining momentum, and there was no like one particular miracle moment. It was a accumulation of all these, which what produces great results for the good to great company. And the doom loop is something that it is a misguided use of acquisitions and selection of leaders who basically undid the work of the previous leaders. Many times in the corporate I have noticed when a new team or the new leader comes in, they don't follow what the previous person has done. They want to do things by themselves and reinvent the whole thing. So this, according to Jim Collins, is the doom loop concept. And don't just go by the big acquisitions, but then start building the required momentum. So this is the concept, and of course, he links it up to his previous book that was Built to Last, and he says how both the books are linked. He talks about that as well, and he gives a nice example of Sam Walton. Any idea who is Sam Walton? All right, Walmart, exactly, very good, yes. So in 1945, Sam Walton started the first Walmart store, and the second store of Walmart came in after 7 years. And then slowly, incrementally, he started building, and in the next quarter century, from one store, Walmart became 38 stores. But in the next quarter, what happens? Walmart hit the breakthrough and it exploded to over 3,000 stores and revenues touching $150 billion. So he says that is the kind of exponential growth that happens. And he says it's much easier to become a great company, but the challenge is to remain great. And I thought that was a lovely line. And the point of this book is to realize, so you don't really waste your time doing unwanted things. He says just focus on these 7 concepts and your company is definitely bound to become a good to great company. And the deepest satisfaction is knowing that in the short time that we are all here in this planet, your time has been very well spent. And that's what really matters in building good to great companies. So that is like the gist of the book. And I think it's a phenomenal read. I really loved reading it. And